Friends, every time I hear about St. Peter, I feel like I got a chance. Every time I go to the Holy Land and I follow in his footsteps, I feel like I got a chance. I've even followed in his footsteps before I was ordained on a trip following in the footsteps of Saints Peter and Paul through Turkey, Greece, and all the way up to Rome, where both were martyred. We just got back from the Holy Land. Yes, I'm tired. Yes, I'm jet lagged. Is my patience thin? Yes. That's international travel. You get there, right before you get there, you got to take a COVID test. You got to go to the special place and you got to give them your passport number and you get the test, and then when the results come in, you got to print it out and you're ready to go. And we go to the airport, and it's funny because you go through all of this and they just go, oh, okay. Where's your passport, all this other stuff, get on the plane, and then you're checked again when you get to the country, the destination, or the place, the port of departure. All these other things have to be seen again. You get to Tel Aviv, and right away you got to take a COVID test. And so I'm there with all the pilgrims, and they got all these tables set up and all these technicians, and you're hustling and bustling, and they take the COVID test a little different there, right? So you sit down and they got the swab and they put it in the back of your throat. Then they put it in your nose. Then they do it again. And I said to the pilgrims, thank God it wasn't the reverse. So we set out, and we were just at this place that we hear about in the gospel. We were just at this place a few days ago. The place of St. Peter, the primacy of St. Peter. And I've been there, it's my third time to be at that place. We got to go to some places that we hadn't been before. I don't remember if Deacon Chris was with us when I know he's been to the primacy of St. Peter, but we celebrated Mass and there's a round altar and it was outside. This was either last time or the time before. And I told the pilgrims, look, it's not fair because you're looking at the Sea of Galilee as I celebrate Mass. I'm going to celebrate Mass ad orientem so I can look at the Sea of Galilee too. And we're there, and there is a special place inside the church where there's this big rock in front of the altar, and it says Mensa Christi. This is the table of Christ. This is where he fed them when they were out there on the boat and he brought them in. He had a charcoal fire there and grilled fish for them. They're out there. Why did they come back to Galilee? So when you go to the Holy Land, this becomes an enigmatic problem because Galilee is up here. It's 90 miles away from the place of resurrection, and Jerusalem's down here. And they had all these encounters with Jesus down in Jerusalem, and now they're back in Peter's backyard, his hometown, or near his hometown. And they say, let's go out and fish. There's a lot of speculation saying that this is an addition to John's gospel, but scholars say no, the language and the writing are very much connected with what comes before. So what happened? We're not sure. In my own reflection, I think that Peter and the apostles were very just taken aback by the resurrection and everything that happened, and said, you know what? And they were concerned that they were going to be killed as well. Let's take a break and go back up to Galilee and catch our breath. And while they're there, Peter says, let's go fishing. Almost like going back to his old life. Jesus is there on the shore saying, in a sense, by his very presence, no, I told you you would be fishing for men. Not ordinary fishing. And when they get back in, you're going to become a shepherd. He switches from fishing to being a shepherd. And Peter, they see him. They see this shadowy figure on the shore. And this man is telling them, you know what, have you caught anything? No, we've tried all night. This is replay of when he first met Peter. Throw the net on the other side of the boat. and they catch all these fish. And the beloved one, the church says, as John says, "It is the Lord." And I'm sure the lights came on for everybody at that point. Peter, who was lightly clad, tucked in his garment, jumped into the sea. Oftentimes you strip down, the guys would strip down to almost nothing, maybe nothing, to fish as they were. It's sometimes warm out there on the lake. And he jumps into the sea, and he arrives first, and they come after him. And they're like, there's this charcoal fire, and fish and bread is on this fire. Now, do you remember where the charcoal fire was just a few weeks ago? It's the only time it's mentioned anywhere in Scripture. It was when Peter was there warming himself when the Lord was taken into custody. This isn't an accident that John put it in the gospel. He's warming himself right before he denies the Lord. And they come in, and he says, "Children, have breakfast." And this dialogue happens between Peter and Jesus. Very profound. "Peter, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord, you know." And there's a difference in the way the Greek is written, and there is no accident in this. So when Jesus says, "Do you love me?" he uses the word in Greek, agape. That's a self-surrendering love. And Peter responds with philios, which is a friendship. And the transliteration could be, "Yes, Lord, you know that I'm fond of you. Feed my sheep." "Peter, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. I'm fond of you. Tend my lambs." "Peter," third time, and Peter's getting upset. "Do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord, you know." And Jesus switches his use of the verb. He says philios. He has to come down to Peter's level. He has to meet Peter where he's at. Isn't that amazing about our Lord? And he says, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Tend my sheep." Why this threefold proclamation? See, Peter sinned. When we sin, if you think about penance, he sinned. He denied him 3 times, stepped away 3 times. Jesus asked him 3 times, "You love me?" Step back. Step back. In the Holy Land, there is a place called St. Peter Gallicantu. It means St. Peter of the Rooster. And it's the house of Caiaphas, the high priest. And there is a profound sculpture outside the church. I took a picture of it. Every time I see it, I think it hits me harder. Peter is sitting in front of this column, and the rooster is up there. And there are 3 individuals around him, the 3 that asked him, "You're a Galilean, you know this man. You were with him." "No, I wasn't, I don't know him." And it says in Latin, "Non novi illum." I don't know him. And I posted it on my Facebook page. And I say, may we never fall into this, that when push comes to shove, when we're pressed, we say, "No, I don't really know him." Maybe it's in one of our actions. Maybe it's in the way that we deal with people in the workplace, and they confront us in some ways about being a follower of Christ. "I don't know him." And then he has to take that back. "You know that I'm fond of you." We read this first reading, and we were in that area too, down in Judea, where they take Peter in, and he's standing in front of the Sanhedrin. Something has happened, something has changed. He's not merely an admirer of Christ. He's fallen into the agape love, self-surrendering sacrifice. Jesus tells him in the gospel, when you were young, used to put a belt around your waist and go where you want, but now when you get old, someone's going to put a belt around you and they're going to take you where you don't want to go. So in the gospel, or in the first reading, something has happened to Peter. He's standing in front of the Sanhedrin and they say, hey, we told you. Who is the Sanhedrin? These are priests, most likely from the Sadducee order, who some of the Pharisees could have been there too, not sure. But this is a council of elders, and they make judgments like they did on Jesus. Peter's there before. We told you not to speak in that man's name. I don't know how many times in my life I've had maybe not that same thing said to me, but something like it. Even at my job at Empire, my boss was a fallen away Catholic, and these Christians from other departments would come over and have God talks with me. It was really interesting. They were from different traditions. And he essentially said, you know, you need to quit being so Christian. He didn't say it like that, but that was what it was. And it's like, dude, I've set my eyes on the hills of Jerusalem. I can't turn back. I can't turn back. There's no turning back. I know what's back there. I've been there, I've done that. So Peter is there before me. He says, we must obey God and not man. We know from the church tradition that Peter died. He was crucified upside down on the Vatican Hill in Rome. If you go to Rome and you take the Scavi tour, which takes you down below the altar of St. Peter's, you can see his bones tucked away in this little niche. And they were more recently found. And everything points to evidence that those are Peter's bones. Somehow he went from being an admirer of Jesus to this self-surrendering agape love, giving up his life for the sake of Jesus and his kingdom, for the sake of the mission, going all over the place. We saw so much out there. We saw fish. We saw mustard seed plants. We saw the thorn bush from which they used to make the crown of thorns. I mean, the thorns on it like this big. We saw donkeys. We saw camels. We saw sheep. We saw goats. This time, I mean, lots of cats. I don't know about cats in the Bible. There may be, Jesus is the lion of the tribe of Judah. We saw cats, lots of cats. But it was amazing. But just like the message is to Peter today, it's to every pilgrim, whether you go to the Holy Land or not. Do you love me? And Jesus will meet you where you're at. Yes, Lord, I'm fond of you. He wants to take you beyond that. He wants to take you to the self-surrendering love of St. Peter. And today we celebrate St. Joseph the Worker. He wants to take you to that kind of level. How do we get there? Well, I'm not entirely sure, but it has to do with faith and grace and sacraments of the church and saying prayers of surrender every day. Prayers of surrender every day. It's not just a one-time thing. We see the life of Paul, and he talks about being shipwrecked and beaten and hungry and cast out. All these things for the sake of Jesus and the kingdom. This is where the Lord wants to move us. From mere admiration of Christ to this agape love. This love that is self-surrendering. Those of you that are married know this when it comes to loving your spouse. Because your marriage ain't going to last if you don't move from fondness to self-sacrificing love. That fondness probably wears off after, I don't know, some of you could tell me, I don't know, a year and a half. And then you start to slog through the road of what it is to be married. And you have to ignore little things that are annoying. And you have to pray deeply to love your spouse even more every day. This is how you get through it. How do you get through it? Ask those that have been married for 40, 50, 60 years. Marriage, more than 50% of them end in divorce. We're trying as a Catholic Church to give people good preparation so they have tools in the toolbox for when that fondness starts to wear off and the reality of living with the person, loving a person for the rest of your life kicks in. Prayer, faith, grace, the sacraments of the church, and those prayers of surrender. We will move from fondness to self-surrendering love.